I still remember the moment, as if it had just happened. I was standing by the office coffee machine, stirring almond milk into my morning latte, when Ethan, the newly appointed CEO and nephew of the company's founder, strode into the break room. He didn't acknowledge me, didn't even glance my way. His eyes swept over me like I was an outdated printer he'd already decided to replace. "Nora, my office." "Now," he said, his tone sharp and final, like a judge delivering a verdict. It wasn't a request. I'd been with Horizon Dynamics for 12 years, pouring my heart into the operations department. I'd streamlined supply chains, saved millions through renegotiated vendor contracts, and mentored half the staff, now scattered across the open plan office. But none of that seemed to matter to Ethan. His uncle, Margaret Hensley, had built the company on trust and collaboration. Ethan, handed the reins at 32, seemed to think leadership meant wielding a scepter. I followed him, my stomach knotting with unease, the bitter taste of coffee lingering on my tongue. He didn't sit down. He leaned against his desk, arms crossed, and fixed me with a cold stare. "You're done here," he said, voice devoid of warmth. "We don't need people who coast on past achievements, holding us back." I blinked, the words hitting like a slap. "I'm sorry, what?" "You heard me," he said, picking up his phone and scrolling as if I were already gone. "Pack your things. You're out, effective immediately." My pulse thundered in my ears. 12 years, countless late nights, skipped family dinners, weekends spent untangling logistics crises, and this was how it ended. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to remind him of the deals I'd closed that kept this company afloat. But instead, I forced a tight smile. "Understood, Ethan?" I said, my voice steady. "Good luck." I turned and walked out, my head high, though my hands trembled as I passed my colleagues' desks. Their eyes followed me, a mix of confusion and concern, but I gave a small shake of my head. "Don't ask. Not now." I packed my desk in silence, a photo of my daughter, Sophie, a worn stress ball, a stack of vendor contracts I'd been reviewing. As I drove home, memories flooded in years of loyalty, of building something I believed in, reduced to a 5-second dismissal by a man who barely knew my name. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was curious. Why me? Why now? The timing fell off. We were days away from finalizing a critical supply chain agreement with Apex Industries, a deal I'd spent 9 months orchestrating. I knew every clause, every stakeholder, every risk. Ethan hadn't even asked about it. Had he read the contract? Did he even know what was at stake? That night, I barely slept, the question gnawing at me. Something about Ethan's casual cruelty, his unshakable confidence, didn't add up. He'd made a move, but it felt like one made in ignorance. And ignorance, in a company like ours, could be a very expensive mistake. The next morning, just before 10 a.m., my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. After yesterday, I wasn't sure I could handle another blow. But curiosity, as always, won out. "Hello? Nora, it's Margaret Hensley." The voice was unmistakable crisp, commanding. The woman who'd hired me 12 years ago after a grueling 3-hour interview. I just got back from Tokyo and walked into a damn mess. "Why are you gone?" I froze, my heart skipping a beat. "Your nephew fired me yesterday, said I was coasting and dragging the company down." A sharp inhale, then silence. When she spoke again, her voice was low, controlled, like she was holding back a storm. "He what?" I recounted the conversation, keeping my tone neutral. "He didn't give a reason beyond that, just told me to leave." Another pause then. "Nora, did he mention the Apex deal?" "No," I said, my curiosity piqued. "He didn't bring it up at all." "God damn it," she muttered, and I heard the rustle of papers, then a muffled curse. "Nora, your contract has a clause when I insisted on after the Vantage fiasco. You're the only authorized representative for the Apex agreement. Legally, ethically, and practically, that deal doesn't close without you. The words sank in slowly, like pieces of a puzzle snapping into place. Ethan hadn't read my contract. He'd fired me without knowing the consequences, and now the company's biggest deal in years was at risk. A slow, burning realization sparked in my chest, not just betrayal, but opportunity. He'd made a catastrophic mistake, and I held the key to fixing it, or letting it burn. Margaret, what happens if I don't come back? I asked, testing the waters. A heavy sigh. The deal collapses. Apex walks, and we lose a $50 million contract. Ethan's position becomes tenuous. I lean back on my couch, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in 24 hours, I felt a flicker of control. I'll think about it, I said, but I'm not walking back in without conditions. Name them, she replied without hesitation. I'll let you know, I said, and ended the call. I sat there, my cold coffee forgotten, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Ethan had tried to erase me, but he'd only exposed his own incompetence. He thought he could play CEO like it was a game of chess, moving pieces without understanding the board. But this wasn't a game. This was a company, and his reckless move was about to cost him dearly. By 11 a.m., my phone was a war zone. First, a voicemail from Ethan, his voice tight with forced calm. Nora, there's been a misunderstanding. We need you for the Apex meeting today. Call me back ASAP. Then, a text from the operations manager, followed by a frantic email from legal. I ignored them all, letting the notifications pile up like evidence of their panic. At 11:30, my old coworker Jenna called, her voice hushed. Nora, it's chaos here. Margaret stormed into the boardroom with the Apex contract and ripped Ethan apart in front of everyone. Asked him point blank if he'd read it before firing you. He tried to dodge, said he was streamlining the team, but she wasn't having it. She flipped to the clause about you being the sole negotiator and just stared at him. He went white, Nora, like ghost white. I exhaled a mix of satisfaction and disbelief. What did Margaret say? She told him if Apex pulls out, he's done. The whole office is buzzing. People are saying he didn't even know about the clause until today. I nodded, processing. Thanks, Jenna. Nora, what are you gonna do? You've got them by the throat. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to march into the office and watch Ethan squirm. But another part, the part that had spent years swallowing slights, working weekends, and fixing other people's messes, wanted to let them feel the weight of their choices. I'm still deciding, I said and hung up. By noon, Margaret texted, Nora, I'm sorry for Ethan's actions. Please come in. We need to talk, not just about Apex, but about your future here. It was the first apology I'd received, and it carried weight, but I wasn't ready to forgive and forget. This wasn't just about a contract or a job. It was about respect, about the years I'd given, about being discarded like I was nothing. I needed more than a panicked invite back. I replied, I'll come in to discuss Apex, but only with you. I want a revised contract, full autonomy on the deal, and guarantees this won't happen again. I'll be there at 1 p.m. I hit send, changed into a sharp laser, and headed out. Walking into Horizon Dynamics felt different this time. I didn't use my old keycard. I signed in at reception like a visitor, a deliberate choice that turned heads. The receptionist's eyes widened. Ms. Carter Nora, Margaret's waiting for you. As I walked through the office, conversations hushed, eyes followed. The air was thick with tension, like the calm before a storm. Margaret was in her office, standing by the window, her silver hair catching the light. Nora, she said, turning. Thank you for coming. I nodded, taking a seat. Let's talk. She didn't waste time. I misjudged Ethan. I thought he was ready to lead, but he's been reckless. Firing you was a mistake, a big one. The Apex deal is at risk, and I need you to save it. But more than that, I need to know what it'll take to keep you here. Her candor surprised me. I'll handle Apex, I said. But I want everything in writing, autonomy on this deal, no interference from Ethan, and a commitment to protect employees from this kind of overreach in the future. She nodded. Done. And Ethan's authority is being reevaluated. This won't happen again. I studied her, searching for any hint of deflection, but her gaze was steady. All right, I said, let's get to work. The Apex meeting was set for 2 p.m. I spent the next hour reviewing the contract, ensuring every detail was airtight. Apex's CEO, Ms. Rivera, was a stickler for precision, and I'd built a rapport with her over months of negotiations. Any sign of internal disarray could spook her, and Ethan's stunt had already raised red flags. As I walked to the boardroom, I saw Ethan lingering in the hall, his face a mix of defiance and unease. He opened his mouth to speak, but Margaret appeared, her expression a warning. "Ethan, my office!" Now, he shot me a glare, but followed her, his steps heavy. Ms. Rivera arrived on time, her team in tow. I greeted her in Spanish, a small gesture that earned a warm smile. "Nora, always a pleasure," she said. "I heard there was some turbulence here yesterday." I didn't flinch. A minor hiccup resolved. "We're fully prepared to finalize today." The meeting went flawlessly. 2 hours later, we shook hands, the contract signed. Ms. Rivera pulled me aside. "I don't know what happened, but I'm glad you're here. No one else could have closed this." As she left, Margaret approached, relief etched on her face. "You did it, Nora. You saved us. You owe this company a leader," I said, my voice firm. "Not someone who plays games with people's livelihoods." She didn't argue, just nodded. I know. That evening, as I drove home, the weight of the past 2 days began to lift. I'd walked back into a company that had tried to erase me and proved I was indispensable, but I knew this wasn't the end. Ethan might be sidelined for now, but people like him don't vanish. They regroup, and I needed to be ready. The Apex deal made waves, earning Horizon Dynamics a feature in an industry journal. My name wasn't mentioned, but the office knew who'd pulled it off. My inbox filled with congratulations from colleagues, some genuine, others opportunistic. The mood-lightened laughter returned to the break room, and Margaret's presence reassured the staff that order was restored. But I wasn't naive. I'd seen how quickly loyalty shifts in corporate games, and I sensed something brewing. Small things started happening. My access to a critical database was inexplicably revoked, blamed on a glitch. A report I'd submitted was returned with missing pages, flagged as incomplete. Then, a client received an email allegedly from me, with incorrect pricing details. I caught it in time, but the damage was done. Whispers of my sloppiness began to circulate. I reported each incident to IT, who confirmed no external breaches. The issues traced back to internal systems accessed via shared terminals. Someone was targeting me, and I didn't need to guess who. Ethan was no longer making big moves like firing me that had backfired spectacularly. Now he was playing a subtler game, discrediting me bit by bit, until I looked unreliable or quit. I'd seen this before. Early in my career, a manager had used similar tactics rerouting my emails, forgetting to invite me to key meetings until I was sidelined. I was younger then, less equipped to fight back. But now I knew better. I started documenting everything: screenshots, timestamps, emails. I kept a private log, noting every irregularity, every interaction with Ethan's team. If this was a war, I was building an arsenal. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation that confirmed my suspicions. Passing a conference room, I caught Ethan's voice, low and deliberate. "She's slipping. Ever since Apex, she's been erratic. We need to start looking at replacements for operations." Another voice's assistant, I realized, replied, "But the board loves her after that deal." "They won't if she keeps making mistakes," Ethan said, his tone smug. "Keep pushing the errors, small ones. She'll crack." I stepped away, my heart pounding, not with fear, but with clarity. This wasn't just personal, it was calculated. Ethan was betting I'd fold under pressure. He was wrong. That evening, I met Margaret in her office, the city skyline dark beyond the windows. I laid out everything: the glitches, the altered reports, the fake email. "It's Ethan," I said. He's trying to force me out without pulling the trigger himself. Margaret's face hardened. I suspected as much. I've already ordered an internal audit. These kinds of games don't just hurt you, they threaten the company. Why haven't you stopped him? I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. She sighed, looking older than I'd ever seen her. I wanted to believe he could change, but I was wrong. He's not ready to lead, not now, maybe not ever. The audit began the next week, and the office became a pressure cooker. Whispers followed me, some supportive, others wary. I kept my head down, focusing on my work, but the tension was palpable. Then on Thursday, the audit team called me in. The lead auditor, Priya, was direct. Nora, we've traced multiple irregularities to shared workstations. Login credentials tied to Ethan's assistant were used to alter your files and send that email. It's a clear pattern of sabotage. I nodded, my jaw tight. What's next? We're presenting to Margaret tomorrow, Priya said. She wants the full truth, no sugarcoating. You don't have to be there, but I'll be there, I said. I want to see this through. The next morning, the boardroom was a battlefield. Margaret sat at the head, her expression unreadable. Priya and her team laid out the evidence: tampered files, falsified emails, login traces, all pointing to Ethan's team. Ethan arrived late, his usual swagger diminished, but still present. When he saw me, his eyes narrowed. She shouldn't be here, he said. This is confidential. She's here because you made it her business, Margaret snapped. Sit down. Priya presented the findings, her voice steady. Ethan's face grew paler with each slide. When she finished, I spoke, my voice calm but cutting. You didn't just target me, Ethan. You risked the company's reputation, our client's trust, all to settle a personal score. He scoffed, but it was weak. This is a witch hunt. She's bitter because I called her out. Margaret's voice was ice. You called her out. You fired her without cause, nearly lost us Apex, and now you've been caught sabotaging her work. I gave you a chance to lead, Ethan. You failed. The room was silent. Ethan's bravado crumbled, replaced by a flicker of panic. This isn't what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, Margaret said. You're suspended, pending a board review. Get out. Ethan stared at her, then at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Finally, he stood and left, the door clicking shut behind him. Margaret turned to me. I'm sorry, Nora. I let this go too far. You can fix it, I said, but it starts with accountability. She nodded, and for the first time, I saw resolve in her eyes. Ethan's suspension became permanent. The board's review uncovered more than just my case. Other employees had been quietly pushed out, their complaints buried. The evidence was overwhelming, and Ethan's exit was swift and silent. No press release, no scandal, just a memo citing strategic restructuring. But the office knew, and the relief was palpable. A week later, Margaret called me into her office. Nora, I've been thinking about the future. You've shown more leadership than most executives I've known. I want you as Chief Operating Officer. I blinked, caught off guard. That's the big leap. You've earned it, she said, and I need someone I can trust to rebuild what Ethan broke. I hesitated, then nodded. If I take it, I want to do it right. Transparency, fairness, a culture where people aren't afraid to speak up. That's what I'm counting on, she said. In the months that followed, I stepped into the role, reshaping operations from the ground up. I brought back 2 employees who'd been unfairly let go, implemented open-door policies, and started mentorship programs for junior staff. The office began to feel like a team again, not a battlefield. As for Ethan, I heard he'd taken a low-level role at a startup across the country. His name carried weight, but so did his mistakes. I didn't wish him ill, I didn't need to. He'd built his own cage. One evening, as I left the office, I passed the break room where it all began. The coffee machine hummed softly, a reminder of that morning when Ethan thought he could erase me. He'd underestimated me, but so had I, in a way. I'd spent years proving my worth through silence, thinking it was enough. But it wasn't until I stood up, demanded accountability, and refused to be dismissed that I truly claimed my place. I smiled, switched off the light, and walked out into the night, ready for whatever came next.